Hello everyone, welcome to the Aardvark Swift podcast. I'm your host Michael Rodber. With me today is Connor Green. He is the production consultant here. And we're talking to Blazing Griffin, specifically we're talking to the co-heads of games. We've got Neil McPhillips, he's the head of games operations. And we've got Justin Allae-Carew, he's the commercial head of games. Hello to you both, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Hello.
Not a problem. Start from the beginning then. How was Blazing Griffin founded? Tell us a bit more about your background.
Sure. So Blazing Griffin was founded in 2011 as a game studio in Edinburgh. This was a small team that formed around a game called The Ship. It was a game originally made by a studio called Outerlight in Edinburgh. The team there published that game and then developed a few more games. And then around a few years later, the head of the games team began to talk to the head of a film production company and a post-production company, all at similar stages. Together they formed this idea that they could do more, that the whole would be greater than the sum of the parts, and decided to merge into one company that would have these three distinct strands. And that was around 2015, 2016, when that went through, now headquartered in Glasgow, where we established a post-production facility, and soon after that produced the film Anna and the Apocalypse and released the game Murderous Pursuits. And so the kind of the growth of the company, really exploded 2016, 2017. And since then, we have been, individually as distinct companies, pursuing our own growth trajectories in our own industries, while we explore a lot of new opportunities that we encounter through the fact that we do have these complementary skill sets in-house.
It's really interesting how this kind of came about. Obviously, just before we start the podcast, we had a brief chat about the sort of direction of the industry with sort of multimedia companies and stuff like that. So that's something we'll explore a little bit more later. Obviously, being games recruiters and talking to you and working with you as a game studio, that's kind of most of the stuff that we'll focus on. And obviously, like you said, the game studio was the first to form in 2011. Would you mind telling us, if you know, how that studio came to be about and sort of what the reasons for the name was?
So it was founded by Peter van der Watt, and I'm not sure why he chose Blazing Griffin at the time. But Peter, who's from South Africa, actually, he had a desire to start a game company, and he looked around and where's best to start a games company, and decided Scotland. I think the industry here is vibrant, and it's also a lovely place to live in. So Peter came over to the UK and to Edinburgh, and began looking at opportunities and different ways to start a games company. And the first of these opportunities was an agreement around The Ship, which was a game that had been launched in 2006, and had a passionate fan base, but had declined over the years. So Peter founded Blazing Griffin, took on board a few of the original developers of the game, and more kind of joined Blazing Griffin as the years went on, and relaunched The Ship on Steam and kind of breathed new life into it from a publishing angle. And we saw incredible numbers coming back into the game, and that then propelled the next few years of growth for Blazing Griffin through self-developed titles like Distant Star: Revenant Fleet, which was Scottish BAFTA award winner. And that was an RTS game that had roguelike narrative inside it. There's actually quite a deep narrative inside it, despite it being, a roguelike. And that was, something that's always been in the DNA of Blazing Griffin, is being storytellers. Now that is across a lot of different genres. The ship is social deduction, Distant Star is a roguelike RTS, but we do have this desire that has been there from the founding, to be storytellers and to give people an interesting narrative experience, and that's something that we've continued with our recent titles.
With Distant Star Revenant Fleet as well, with the BAFTA win, how did it feel to get that?
Well, I wasn't around, neither was Neil, at the time that we won.
Yeah.
I knew the guys at the time.
I think it should be said that Justin and I are kind of, we've been with the company for almost 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. I lose track of time. So that was before our time. So I think it's nice, coming into that. It helped make the decision easier to move here, knowing that there was something there, there was a little bit of prestige and something good had been created. So from our outside perspective, it was lovely. And from our perspective right now, it's great to have something like that in the trophy cabinet.
And obviously we'll talk more to you, Neil, after this about your kind of reasons for joining the company in the Aardvark section, which is a shameless plug for anyone listening to join us on that one. But you have been about to be BAFTA nominated for Murder Mystery Machine. That's right, isn't it? I mean, that's an achievement in itself, and it's a testament to kind of these kind of games that you're making and these varied sort of titles. How did that feel to be even just nominated for a BAFTA?
Very pleased. I think it being a BAFTA was quite significant for us versus a games industry award. Murder Mystery Machine was a really interesting title for us that meant a lot to us, because it was an opportunity for us to bring in some of the skill sets from other departments. The game is an episodic detective game that is written like a procedural cop drama, and we brought in a TV writer to look at crafting this episodic mystery that mirrored the structure of A plots, B plots. This episode will focus on this type of mystery. This one will be looking at the relationship progression of the two cops involved, and really looking at the common formats from TV and bringing them into games. But the game ultimately was a puzzle game where you are asked to link various pieces of evidence in these crime scenes to answer the game's central questions. And so there was an interesting dynamic between player-led discovery and developer-led discovery, what the game tells you. And so it was a really interesting experience because linear TV, it's all what they show you. There's no interactive discovery. So it was a really interesting challenge to bring and collide both worlds together. But that meant that getting the BAFTA nomination was, all the more meaningful, I think.
Obviously, you mentioned that as a studio as a whole, you're really passionate about, intertwining narrative into all your projects and stuff, particularly in that the Murder Mystery Machine. It's interesting that it's a different kind of type of narrative that you have to do. It's, when to hold your cards and when to show them almost is kind of crucial to sort of murder stories. The same goes for TV and production and post-production, which is what some of the other segments to your studio do. I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the kind of company structure, because, like I said, we were talking before, there's a couple of times where staff overlap and stuff. What is it like as a studio to have sort of some overlapping staff, and how do they kind of have to adjust from working on, say, a film project where it is just a linear narrative to then having to work on a game narrative, for example? Is that something that occurs?
Yeah, I think I always joke with our film and TV teams that they plan for 2 years and then they make something for 3-4 months. They kind of have these long drawn out periods where they're writing and they're feeding back and they're pitching and they're planning the production for something, and then they just go into like this huge blitz, and everything is generally made in a very compressed period of time. With games, we plan for 2 months and then we work for 2 years, and it's kind of a very different structure to it, and kind of getting people across those is it's interesting, because people are used to working in very different ways. What has been interesting in recent times is, I think for the first time, games are are moving into a very prominent position in the entertainment industry with tools like Unreal Engine becoming synonymous in film and TV production now. You know, like the Mandalorian set a very public standard for what can be done with game tools in film and TV, you know, using it for the virtual production. And then all of a sudden, us as a company, well, we're like, well, we've got a game team internally, we've got artists and people that know how to use these tools, and no one in the film and TV industry knows how to use them. And all of a sudden, we're actually like our guys are kind of hot commodities in that area, and it's an interesting kind of turnaround. And you know, we all have different skills that we bring to the table, and it's nice for games to kind of be in a more prominent position. Like just last year, we did our first virtual production project where some of our game artists made backgrounds for a TV project that was then put up onto one of the big kind of LED volumes that is used in virtual production. And you know, some of our guys generally work across. They get kind of called in to do some previs and called in to do some VFX and kind of 2D work. And one of our artists, we made like a rom-com last year, and one of our artists made all the kind of steamy Mills and Boons like front covers of the books and stuff like that. So there's little bits of that. And then, you know, as Justin said previously, we pulled writers in from the film and TV side to help us structure a kind of episodic narrative, which is not a super common thing in games, you know. So it's kind of nice from that point of view that we have access to all of that, and over time we're kind of growing in our experience with it. So, you know, we're becoming kind of I guess masters of the trade across all of these things, which is nice.
It really kind of seems like you're leading the way with how the industry's going, with this kind of overlap between game studios with film and TV as well. We were talking a bit about earlier, some of the studios on the podcast are starting to move into that direction, but it seems like you're already at the forefront of it.
Yeah, it was 100% planned. This is what we always say.
These things never are.
We are functionally three companies, and it's, you know, it's important for us in the games team, and for, you know, Neil and myself, we make games, and we make games for a gaming audience. And similarly in post-production, they're focused on working with TV and film clients, Netflix, BBC, Sky, and doing that, and pictures, again, functionally separate, working on full feature films for theatrical distribution. And while, you know, each of these three departments and companies started small, I think the fact that functionally we were separate actually, hopefully, gives us a bit of a leg up, because we are not needing to branch in and convert, you know, skill sets so much, because we have these skill sets in house, and actually it's just more about collaborating in the right way in order to look at the intersecting media forms.
What kind of intersecting media forms have you worked on, and has there ever been a point where all three departments have worked on one sole project, or is it only usually separate ones, or maybe one or two of your departments at one time working together?
I can't be completely specific on what the projects have been, but like we were working on this kind of stuff like a long time ago. Like we prevised an entire movie using Unity game engine and mocap. And that was long before game tools were ever being considered for film and TV. So we did this kind of basically storyboarding and prevising for a movie we were pitching, and we had guys in all the teams kind of coming together to do that, to set that up and present that. So that was kind of fun, like taking the film concept and passing it over between the different departments. And I was saying before, like one of our kind of current ambitions is moving into virtual production. And that is something where we have groups internally now that are comprised of people from all the different divisions. We need the post-production guys who are the kind of technical experts in that area of from the TV background, know how to set up cameras and the kind of actual like physical technical stuff. We have our guys who are capable of producing like amazing 3D assets and understanding the tool sets. And then we have people from the film and TV side that are actually producing, you know, the content that we're going to be creating. So it is, it's a growing thing for us, and I think we have done it in the past purely as a fun thing to do, an experiment to do, but now it's actually being put into practice and kind of workable projects, which is cool.
It's so cool that, you know, as Justin said, the kind of three individual pillars of the company as a whole all strong in their own sense, but you know, the more that they grow and the more that the industry kind of demands that kind of stuff, that you're primed and ready to really like capitalize on that almost and see what comes of it. So it's really exciting to see what's going to come from the studio. When hiring, do you take into account maybe if someone in the future would be interested on, you know, sort of cross platform stuff, or do you hire exclusively for games?
I think it's I'm always very clear with people when we interview them that they're being hired into a specific team, because the worst thing that could happen is someone that came through the games team hoping that they would, you know, in a few months would then move into the film and TV team, you know, because we hire people that we need, so we can't always kind of say, okay, yeah, cool, we'll just give you to one of the other teams. But it's always a question that I ask people. Coming here, knowing our background, I'd say the vast majority of people that are here are all interested in that kind of space. They want to know more about it, they want to be involved in it, they want to, you know, it's cool. Like when we, I remember when Justin was talking about before, we released a movie, Anna and the Apocalypse, and we all went to the cinema and we got to see our names in the credits. And, you know, that's not something that people in the games generally get to do, is get their names in the credits of a movie. And it's something that I think needs to excite people. And I look for people that are excited by the prospect of getting to kind of cross those borders. But ultimately, it's we hire for games first, you know, like you have to be focused on wanting to do something in games first and foremost. But I generally say to anyone that we hire that the scope is there to do anything. You just need to tell me you want to do it, and we'll work out how that can happen. You know, we're a very agile company in that way. Speaking
of that kind of dynamic of being open with your staff on what kind of projects they want to work on and being kind of accommodating, what else would you kind of say about the culture at Blazing Griffin? We generally have a very social culture. It's been an interesting one over the last couple of years because, you know, very few of us are in the same location anymore. We once upon a time were all in the same office and had a nice social environment, and then all of a sudden had to work out how like everyone else in the world had to work out how to transition that into a virtual space. So it's been interesting. You know, it's nice that things are opening back up again because we've got some staff events planned and we're trying to get everyone together again. But all the way through that, we've made sure that, you know, there's regular touch points. We have a morning stand up that everyone kind of gets involved in, and we have kind of weekly get-togethers where we just purely social experiences. You know, like trying to make sure that everyone's kind of kept up to loop on all the projects we're doing, and everyone knows everyone. You know, when someone starts, and we have people over in Belfast and up in Dundee and down south in England, and just trying to make sure that they kind of get integrated into the team and in a way so communication stays prominent. And, you know, we use Microsoft Teams as our kind of main form of communication, and it's just made up of lots of different rooms where people can go in and talk about different things, and you're included in as much as possible. You know, we try not to keep anything secret from people. If you want to know it, well, it's fine. You know, you jump in. If it's not your project, jump in on it. But, you know, from an environment point of view, you know, I'm very happy with what we've been able to kind of cultivate here, that people that are generally probably would be friends outside of work, you know, that kind of thing.
Just to add that, you know, on a kind of creative and operations point of view, you know, collaboration is a very kind of buzzword, but we do try to be collaborative, and I guess just to give a few examples of this, in terms of, you know, welcoming ideas from the team, working with them, we do expect a lot of creativity from our staff, and seek to hire people who are creative, who want to be part of a team, not just a cog. We want creative solutions to difficult problems, and, you know, while we won't, you know, give creative control of the project to just everyone, you know, in every little aspect, we have seen great things from our individual team members that have, you know, changed the course of projects. Murder Mystery Machine is actually a really good example of this, where our lead artist Sean was mocking up some crime scenes, and mocked up a little diorama of a crime scene, and that's what dictated the game going forward. Actually, you know, it wasn't something that we had originally planned. We'd originally planned a third person over the shoulder perspective game style. The diorama style then dictated the design of the game around it, and that kind of got the creative juices of our designers flowing. So we do really encourage that collaboration in a really active way to get people talking and sharing ideas and solving problems together.
Like you both kind of touched on two cores of like sort of the hiring process. Obviously, Justin, you were talking about creativity, and Neil, you were talking about collaboration more so, and someone who's willing and actively wanting to be part of a team. I think especially if you're going to build such a social culture like Blazing Griffin have got, then those are two massive core values that someone would need to have to be part of a team. And I think Connor, obviously the recruiter, you'll know more than me about how much of a necessity it is in studios.
I think it's massive. I think having that set culture of that open door policy and listening to people's ideas and bringing everyone on board for collaborations, I think it's what makes the difference between someone staying at a company for a long time, other than just staying for 2 years and then moving on to the next project. It's that kind of almost like loyalty that's built up with a company, and I think people really enjoy that, and it's what you're doing with your life, isn't it? So people want to be in a company that listens to them and that they enjoy working for.
Yeah. So with that being said, is there any other sort of key things that you look for when hiring? Obviously in the game studio, but as a whole, is there any core values that you want to see in your candidates that come through to you?
I think we, as Justin mentioned, like we look for creativity in people. Large part of our interviews are just getting to know people, asking them about themselves, asking what they want to achieve, asking what they do in their spare time, and just kind of getting an understanding of what their ambitions are. Because I guess like for us, we genuinely feel like our company can go anywhere. We really feel that the sky's the limit for what we can do, and we want to make sure that the people that come here kind of have that ambition as well. That they want to try new things and do new things and learn new things all along the way. Like they don't want to plateau and kind of just be where they are. Like they want to try different things. So I think that versatility and that creativity that we want to find in people is really important for us.
And another thing that you sort of like proud of at Blazing Griffin is you kind of your BAME, your female and your LGBTQ plus is kind of a big part of your team as a whole, but especially your leadership team too. Sort of giving voices to these traditionally underrepresented people in creative industries is massive, and a thing that you should definitely be proud of. What kind of policies do you sort of have to encourage this and to encourage a flourishing diverse team?
I think it's an interesting one, because I don't think we necessarily have a policy that has created that. I think it's that we have a kind of company vision that has allowed that kind of thing, that ultimately, as you said, our leadership group is formed of a very diverse group of people, and that kind of is a trickle down effect, that permeates the whole company. It's I think when you see those kind of people in leadership, it gives you confidence that you're going to go to a place where you're going to be accepted. We are a very accepting place. Like we have a broad range of people, and we welcome anyone to be themselves. I think people can find a lot of strength and creativity in just being themselves and making that known. I mean, I'm going to pass it over to Justin because I'm of course just a middle-aged white bald man, so not the best person to speak about these kind of things, but I'm very proud of what we've done as a team over the last, Justin and I, over the last 4+ years. Like I really feel like we've created an environment where people are comfortable and happy to be themselves and happy to be here.
I think diversity is a really interesting quality. And as Neil said, it's been important to us for a long time. Blazing Griffin and all of our upper management fundamentally, and regardless of kind of inclusivity, let's say, have always had a world embracing vision in terms of, now this is in part ambition, rather than virtue, but alongside that comes with it some necessary qualities and some necessary precepts that we adhere to, because to be world embracing is to look past actually what has just been media stereotypes for the past 100 years. We're a young company that is for the current modern age and are not satisfied in any sense to just mimic the media forms of the past. That is both in diversity and also just, in artistic quality and in technical capability. Diversity is actually something that we spent a lot of time in recent years consulting a lot about how can we really embrace diversity. To do that is really just understanding the reality around us, and we are, again, we are creating products and content for a very diverse world and require a very diverse workforce to do that, and embrace a lot of creative diversity in that. And I do, I can talk a lot about diversity because it is something that I feel quite passionate about. And I'm quite passionate about the nuances of diversity, because everyone is different. Everyone has come from a different place, and Neil's just kind of disparaged himself as a bald white man, but the perspective that Neil gives from the life that he's led and lived and where he's come from is really important to us. And that's also, going towards our candidates, and when we talk to people, and why Neil said that we want to get to know people. We want to get to know people because people are important to us. The company is the people that we hire. So having, passionate, interesting people who are open to new ideas and not blinded by prejudices of any form. And again, I do also mean kind of just forms in terms of mimicking old creative products. So yeah, I mean, I take a very broad look at diversity, but it's obviously something that's very important to us.
No, I think that's very eloquently put, and I especially like that. It's not just policy driven. It's not just ticking boxes to say, well, we need to meet this quota. It's like you said, it's integral to what you are as a company, and the people that kind of come into the business are, you're some of your parts essentially, and your perspective on creation and being creative and art essentially is to have varying perspectives. And it sounds like you especially just are very passionate about that as an individual, but as a company as a whole. So I think that's really a massively good thing, and I think again, something that you should be proud of. You did say again that it's something you look for in candidates. Going a bit more into Connor's bread and butter here, so I'll kind of let him take a bit more of the reins on this. What is your kind of general hiring process? What kind of stages would a candidate have to go through to work at Blazing Griffin?
Our first stage is generally always a call with myself or Justin, and that is always kind of like just like a half an hour just intro, just a kind of very informal, very just like, we're just going to chat. I'm going to let you ask questions about us and the company. I'm going to explain what I can. I'm going to ask you some questions, and then we'll make a decision from there, who will come into a second interview. So I've been interviewing for art positions recently. So at that second point, I'll bring in a couple of our senior artists who will come in the call. And again, it's the same kind of thing. Like, they want to know a bit more about them, and they'll ask a bit more about their experience and their skills, but also, their interests in the area of art and why they want to do that kind of thing. And then if it's a more junior position, we'll do some kind of test to support it. But if it's a more kind of established position, we generally kind of go off of that, like meeting the team, talking about the role. It's important to see what questions they ask, it's important to see what they kind of put forward in those meetings. But generally, like we used to have a very, I think, especially before the pandemic, a far more formal thing. Like, we're going to make you get on a train and come up, and then because you've come up from wherever you've come from, we're going to dedicate a couple of hours to this, and it turns into a much more formal, kind of intense thing. I think now, because we have this freedom to be like, hey, just jump on a call when you've got time. We have kind of made our interviews a little less formal because of that, and I think it's helped us get some recent candidates and make some recent hires, because we were able to kind of create quite an informal, comfortable environment that mimics our actual working environment as well. How we tend to treat people on a daily basis, and the kind of communication we have. Like, I definitely, from mine and Justin's perspective, like, I want to demystify us. I don't want people to see us as management. and someone that they can't approach. And we have a very open door policy on all the things we do. We run our morning stand-ups. It's me and Justin that talk to the whole team every day, because I don't like to kind of pass that stuff down to people below, and put that kind of responsibility on them. It's our responsibility to just be here for the team, and I like to try and get that across as much as possible in interviews. So, probably not hugely dissimilar in terms of the kind of technical questions we might end up asking people, but from a personal approach, we like to kind of make sure people feel comfortable during those interviews.
You touched upon that, so it's like the technical stuff is all still in there, but it's a lot less intimidating, I guess, which I think brings out the candidates' kind of true selves and who you are going to be hiring, not just the front that they're putting on for the interview, which is good to do. And it also quickens up the process as well, rather than having to get on a train and go up as well. It can unnecessarily extending the process, which can put candidates off as well. So making it more streamlined and relaxed, I think, is the way forward for a lot of studios that need to kind of jump on with the times.
100%, yeah. I think, we it's different for each of the disciplines, like between art and code. And Alex, our lead coder, like, we talk a lot about what we look for when we're, especially grads, and we talk a lot about what we're looking for when we're hiring those kind of people. And it's problem solving, and it's that kind of ability to, we're going to give you some kind of code test, and it's not just about your answers, it's about how you kind of get to those answers. And honestly, like, I don't mind if you spent some time during that, like, Googling and working out those kind of things, because it shows that you're capable of actually finding a solution. It doesn't necessarily need to be, it's not an exam, it doesn't need to be in your head. Games are problem solving. That's what you'll be doing every single day, is solving problems. And it's your ability to kind of think outside of the box and solve those kind of things. So we like to just kind of make that clear to people. It's the end result is what matters here, and it's not necessarily the path how you get there. People, I think, generally have a little bit of a too formal approach with these kind of things, and do kind of treat it like high school exams, where it's like, you need to know, going to come and sit in a room and write it all down and you're in isolation. It's like, no, we're going to give you time to go away and really think about this stuff, and come back. Once you're happy with it, present it back to us, and explain to us how you're going to got to that point. And that's all that matters, really, is the end result.
Yeah, you mentioned that the process is slightly different for recruiting graduates. What is do you have a graduate recruitment program specifically?
So I wouldn't say specifically. We've made some really good graduate hires recently that came from our connection to local universities. We tried to be involved whenever we can. I've helped with a lot of steering of curriculum locally. Like, I will sit on groups where they will present, this is what we're trying to get our students to be studying for the next 4 years. Like, once a university sets a curriculum in place, it's kind of locked in place for 4 years, so it needs to be what the industry is looking for. Otherwise, they're not giving their students the best chance. So we generally try to be involved in things like that whenever we can. I think it's really cool. And then because of that, you get exposure to the students that are there, and the lecturers will point people out to us, and we'll have people kind of, certainly before the pandemic, we used to have people over quite frequently to sit in and get studio tours and things like that. So we like to be quite involved, and that's been on a more local level. During the pandemic, we were lucky enough to be involved with groups like Into Games. We took part in like the Kickstart process, the Kickstart program, and various different kind of things that go on to help kind of get graduates into games. And I like to think that we've done quite a good job in being involved locally, and I'm hoping more nationally now as well.
You did mention that you're in a sort of aggressive period of growth, you might say, with maybe less harsh language.
A nice period of growth.
Yeah. What kind of departments are expanding the most for you guys at the moment?
I think it's kind of across the board. We've taken on quite a few artists recently. I'm under pressure to get a new producer in right now, because we've kind of expanded so much, and we have multiple projects now. We once upon a time we were a single project studio, and things were a bit more straightforward, and everyone could be quite hands-on with that one project. And now we've slowly kind of expanded into multiple projects, and then all of a sudden, you know, all the kind of production overhead increases with those kind of things, and it's hard to kind of maintain the, I guess, like the personal touch that we've always been very proud of us being able to do. So I need to bring in some production underneath me so I can continue to be that person and take the role I want to take within the studio. So we're looking for a good producer right now. As I say, we just hired a few artists, and we've got a couple spaces open. We're looking for a new animator. Design is a big one for us as well. Each project that we take on, we need talented designers to help us kind of drive those projects forward in the different areas. And as the complexity of our projects grow, you know, we look for more people that can help us in that. So it really is quite across the board. I don't think there's any one specific team that's growing. It's everyone really.
You used to be sort of single project studio, and now you've moved into multi projects. Would you mind giving like a bit of a run through of some of your sort of like key milestone projects that you've done over time? Obviously, we've talked a bit about Murder Mystery Machine as well as Distant Star. What's kind of the general milestones of the stuff that you've been developing?
So I guess, you know, as you mentioned, like our kind of our flagship titles when we were a single project studio, you know, we did Murderous Pursuits, which was a large kind of online multiplayer game, which was one of our last multiplayer games. You know, that was a point when we started to kind of deviate into, we'd done Distant Star by that point as well, but we started to deviate more into offline games as well, and more narrative focused things. And that's when Murder Mystery Machine came about, which was a launch title for Apple Arcade, which was a really cool experience for us because there's not many platforms where you can do an episodic game without, you know, that significant drop off towards the end. You know, people stop waiting for episode 5 to come out, that kind of thing. But because it was a subscription service and it was something new, we got some great feedback for being able to do this kind of eight episode kind of season arc. So that was fun. And then from the back of that, you know, that was our first step into like detective games and adventure games. And we'd always had a really good relationship with the Agatha Christie estate and the things they do. And that's when we were able to do a Hercule Poirot game based on the Agatha Christie character, you know, because they're very interested in keeping that character alive and with younger audiences, and they really loved the idea of doing a video game. So we were able to do a much larger, more specific adventure detective game where we wrote a story. I think we're one of maybe two different people who have ever written an original Poirot story, which is really cool. You know, Agatha Christie, the best-selling author of all time, she wrote all those stories and they still use them all, and we were able to write a completely new one, which was a really cool thing for us. And we've had like incredible feedback on that. You know, we had a lot of people in reviews asking if it was an unreleased story that never made it out, you know, because it was so kind of authentic to her. So that was something we were incredibly proud of, and that has kind of kept us moving in that direction. You know, we're currently in the process of making another detective adventure game, pushing further into the adventure genre this time. So that's really exciting. That's multi-platform, all platforms, Switch, PC, PS5, everything. But then off to the side of that, we're also kind of dabbling in other areas. We're making I can't speak about any of these in too much specificity, but we're making a couple of mobile projects as well. One that's like a really small, fun kind of sports game, like just a kind of quite a casual thing that's not really in our immediate wheelhouse, but something we're really keen to learn more about, to kind of expand on, because it's a really fun thing. And then we're also doing a survival horror game as well that's kind of in the works, which is again not something that we have that prior background in, although we do have a number of people in the team who have experience in that area and are very passionate about it. So it's kind of something that came about because of the passion of the team in that area that kind of steered us in that direction of, you know, enough people really want this, and enough people are, you know, they're talking about it in their spare time, and they keep bringing ideas to the table. And we made a prototype for it, and it just kind of really popped, and we're like, okay, all right, we're going to move forward, we're going to do this, you know. So that's something that we're working on now. And so it's kind of cool to have this variety of projects that are all kind of being driven by people that care about them, which is, I think, the most important thing for me.
The fact that you wrote a brand new Praro story, as well as making these really cool new titles. I'm very surprised you've left it this late in the podcast to bring those up, because they're so exciting. But obviously, yeah, you've quite comprehensively covered stuff that's coming up on the horizon for you. Aside from what you've mentioned, and maybe some more towards the studio as a whole, providing you can talk about it, is there anything on the horizon for Blazing Griffin that you would like to mention?
Going forward, we are a very ambitious company that isn't content with one straight path. I think as you'll just have realized from what Neil's mentioned there, going into some of that, looking at existing IP is something that's interesting for us, and looking at existing books or film IP, or IP from other areas, is something I expect we'll continue to do, and to translate those into game, and this is paving the way for use of our own IP, and that is again a kind of another step into fulfilling our vision as a transmedia company. So on the horizon, we have a couple things that are at the early stages at that intersection, and as we grow in a company, we hope that our films turn into games and our games turn into films, and that's something that we'll focus on. Outside of that, the titles that Neil mentioned on mobile are important for us to make sure that we are adapting to where players are, and looking at new player habits, and the survival horror game has a strong narrative throughout it, and we've definitely come to the realization that gamers aren't the same that they were 30 years ago, and so we're interested in looking at some of these new opportunities in different platforms, and that includes also VR. We recently released an AR version of Murder Mystery Machine on Tilt 5. Go look it up. And that's paved the way for exploring further AR, VR, MR, and so we're interested in looking at new places for new experiences. So yeah, hopefully we have a few exciting years ahead of us. Sorry, that's very vague. But to summarize, we're interested in, we are working with IP, and working in kind of new spaces on PC, console, mobile, and now AR, VR, MR.
Yeah, no, that all sounds fantastic, and there's some really cool things that you've got going on there, and some really important key studio points that I think people are going to really find interesting. So thank you both for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. So if you are listening as well and you are interested in working with Blazing Griffin, our roles, the roles that we have available with them are on the website on aswift.com. Or you can contact Connor specifically if you're looking for a production role. But yeah, we'll leave it there. I've been your host, Michael Rodber, with Neil McPhillips and Justin Allae-Carew. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.